If you love history, traditional arts and skills, and vintage living as much as I do, come join me here at the Homestead, where the conversations are always interesting and educational. I'm glad you're here. Hello and welcome to Willow's Vintage Homestead, where we talk about all manner of old-timey topics. I'm your host, Willow Polson, and with me today is Jody Pritzl, and I am so excited to have her because she's what I consider the world's expert on Shiny Brite ornaments, which I collect. She's written 2 books about that, one of which took over 10 years to complete, Immigrants, Ornaments, and Legacies, A Story of American-Made Glass Christmas Ornaments, and then the other one is Vintage American-Made Glass Christmas Ornaments with loads and loads of pictures. I mean, if you need a pictorial guide of what you're collecting, that's the one to get. So hi, Jody, how you doing?
I'm doing great. And Willow, I have to say, you were an early supporter, so I appreciate you.
Oh, was I? Really? Oh, neat. I've been watching your videos on YouTube for some time, and probably like from the beginning almost. And oh boy, they're just so instructional.
And now I'm in my 5th season. Spoiler alert, I think we released one a couple weeks ago, and there's 4 more in the can. So I'm excited about our 5th season of making videos.
Wow. See, now you wouldn't think there'd be that much to talk
Oh,
about.
I know.
And yet there's more of it. It's like, this one's about bells. This one's about paper caps. This one's, it's like, it's such a thing, you know? So yeah, what got you started doing this? Why are you collecting Shiny Brites?
You know, we all think about things that we cherish from our childhood, right? And there's something about Christmas magic. And for me as a kid, it was this grandmother's tree. It wasn't Christmas until we set up her tree for her and put the bulbs on and put the lights on, and you just take this thing and it sparkles and it dazzles, and it's so special, Willow, because it only occurs at a specific time. Now, I'll confess, I have a holiday tree up for every season, but there's something about Christmas, you know, that's the magic. And these doggone ornaments that have been around, 80 years that you don't think people care about, that all of a sudden somebody sends me an email, says, can you help me? Here's what my grandmother gave me. What do I even have? That's what's so special about them, because everybody's got a story behind the ornament. It's not just a thing. It's something that matters, and it's got a story. When I started digging into it, I thought, wow, this is more than just a little shiny bulb, right? There's somebody that made this. So I kind of got caught up. Let's just say I got a little crazy about that. You start with something from your childhood, and then I'm a curious person. So I where did they come from? How much did they cost? Why were they these wild colors? And
when did they start making orange or pink? And there's so many things.
Where were chartreuse? When did pink? Well, pink and purple, we know the years those came in, but it's just one of those things where the more you dig into it, the more people share with me, the more I want to even investigate just any rabbit hole that comes up.
Not just Shiny Brites too, right? I mean, it's American made. I mean, that's the one people are familiar with because there's so many sold, and it says Shiny Brite right on the cap, and they're familiar with the crinkle cap, and but it's just so far beyond that. I've started, which I shouldn't do. As I've gotten myself now a few premieres. Is that the one?
Yes. Yeah.
What am I doing?
and that was the crazy thing about it. So I started from a Shiny Brite place. And then I found George Frankie Company out of Baltimore. And then now this season, I'm going to delve into Harry Heim and Santa Novelties. And so you keep digging into this, and then you find out a little bit about rivalries. Yeah, it was more than just Shiny Brite. Clearly, they were the market leader. I like to think of them as really one of the first marketers too, because they were doing, newspaper ads, and then they and Frankie were doing magazine ads, and then there was a smattering of television, and then Time Magazine, and so they really tried to create a brand, and were very successful in doing it.
And there's so many different shapes and the different eras. I mean, people have no idea that all the different changes, like every single year, pretty much, there was some kind of a change. Like you've got, wartime unsilvered, and then you've got this color comes in, and then we stopped doing stripes. Stripes aren't popular anymore. Now we're doing polka dots,
And how we have to reinvent the product to change with the times, right? you're coming out of the wartime, and then people want mid-century modern, that's what we call it today. But then
Right.
Christmas ornaments had to keep step with that, with the times. And you
Hmm.
just don't think about Christmas ornaments having to keep step with the times, but they sure as heck did. They had to be fashionable because people
Oh,
didn't want
like,
to put last year's green on a tree, and then aluminum trees come. Oh my goodness. How cool is that?
right. It's like all the bling on top of bling, you know? When I was growing up, okay, I had a weird tree because what it was is we would go to the Cow Palace in San Francisco. It's a big, big auditorium, and on the side of the building, they had flocked trees, and they had white ones and pink ones and blue ones. And this was like the late 60s, I guess it was. And we always got a white flocked tree, and the only ornaments that were on it were different sizes of green shiny brights. That's it. And it looked
Wow.
actually kind of great.
Oh my,
But
oh, it had to be. Oh, you got to send a picture because I share my tree pictures that people send in. So you got to send me a picture if you've got
I
one.
don't have a color picture of it. I have black and
Ah,
white only. I know, right? My dad, the photographer, decided black and white was a really cool thing, and so everything was black and white.
do you have green ones that you hang on your tree every year?
I don't know what happened to that set of ornaments. So I went kind of backwards and was like, oh, the tree box. I remember that. And so I got some ornaments, and I had like two that were left that had novelty things on them. One I think is a Frankie, and one is a Shiny Brite with the stenciled on, it's got like a little scene of like winter and a little church and Santa and stuff like that. And I had like those two were the only
Oh,
survivors of all of this stuff that we had, my grandparents stuff, all of it. And so then it's like, I just gotta, I want more of this. I want to relive the childhood, right? It's exactly the same.
mhm,
It's like I remember
mhm.
that so vividly. I remember looking out my front window in San Francisco, and there was this house with a bay window down the street, and I could see their tree in that bay window, and they had one of those color wheels, and I would just stare at it, changing colors for like an hour.
And it's magic.
Yes, yes,
It's it,
absolutely.
and then a tree looks different in the daytime than it looks at night. That's why I'm glad you brought up Premiere, because Premiere bulbs are just so outrageously beautiful because they look good in the daytime. And then when you put a light behind them, because they're so clear, it
Mm.
just really makes them look amazing.
Yeah, and I got my grandfather's stuff after he passed on. We were going through all of that stuff, and I found the Christmas stuff. I'm like, oh, this is great because he had a separate other different tree from our house, and they had those aluminum reflectors that you put behind the light bulbs.
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
those are so magical, and he's got some of the original bubble lights. I realize we're getting way off of Shiny Brights, but all of that vintage Christmas stuff it is magical. Yeah.
And it's becoming so popular. That's the funny
Hmm.
thing. So 10, 15 years ago, people were just throwing aside all of this, and now I'm just so pleased that subsequent generations are saying, you know what, I think this is really cool compared to maybe what I can get today.
Sure.
um
Oh, yeah. You go
go ahead.
to World Market or something, and there's the newer, as we were saying before, fashionable. You've got the cottage core little animals and mushrooms and stuff, and that's fun. But it's the older, more fragile stuff that's so easy to break, that's like, oh, my grandfather had this. That nostalgia is becoming bigger right now, I think. And because of the fragility, and yet again, it's one of those things people just were like, what's this old junk? Threw it out, or it broke, and so there's less and less of it every year, right?
This next video that I'm going to launch, I actually show some pictures of the designers actually painting the ornaments. And that's
Ooh.
what's really neat to me, is to think about, and in this upcoming video, I list every single person that I think worked at the Santa Novelties factory,
Hmm.
because I want to respect their heritage. Because if they hadn't gone to work every day and painted these delicate, fragile ornaments, and 25%, by the way, of all ornaments were broken before they ever
Oh.
left the factory. Isn't that
Oh,
crazy?
wow. Can you
Yeah.
imagine the mess? I mean, who sweeps that
Oh,
up anyway? So.
but somebody actually literally sat there with a paintbrush doing
Mhm.
some of this work. So it's
Right.
artistry.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, even some of the ones I got for myself in the 80s from an import store were hand painted from
Mhm.
Europe someplace. I was just watching one of your videos earlier today again, and yeah, the hand painted little kind of what's that European, like a teardrop shaped, brush stroke.
Yes. Call it a swish.
Swish. Right. Oh, and then the frosted stuff on the top,
Yeah.
that's a brush stroke. You can see that, and then it's got glitter mica and stuff on there. Oh boy.
When you're looking at an ornament too, I think it's really neat to say, was this mass produced in the ribbon machine in Wellsboro, Pennsylvania, or was this hand blown glass? And then you can ask yourself, was it hand decorated? And so
Hmm.
you can really look at your ornaments and appreciate the craftsmanship that went into it, because a lot of Europeans were hand blown and hand decorated.
Mm.
So the European artistry, it is very, very craftsmanship orientated versus
Hmm.
American made that started in 39.
Hmm.
They were using the machines that blew light bulb. That's what the ribbon machine was used. They just doctored the machine to make Christmas ornaments, but the same way you make a light bulb is the same way you make a Christmas ornament, which is
Right.
another,
Light bulbs.
that's another aspect of this, is really looking at it. And you can tell if you see the lines aren't going to be totally level.
Right. Or
You're going to
uniform. Some are
they're not
thicker.
going to, yes, some are going to be thicker. Your stripes, not all of them are the same. So
Hmm.
you can really look at it and tell. And so when people ask me, what do I have? I'm looking for things of uniformity, and I'm looking for time periods and different ways that you can actually distinguish. So they're not all the same.
But I've got this one oddball, and I don't know what to make of it. And I looked at. There's actually some good color pictures and some old. You can find these online as a PDF, like Sears catalog. They'll have like the
Mhm.
ornament section.
Yeah.
And it's similar to some of those. It's got like this weird, like wiggly tinsel wrapped around it, and no cap at all. But it's looks like it should have a cap. Like they used an ornament that should have a cap. It's pink. It's got polka dots, and then it's got this like weird squiggly tinsel stuff wrapped around it. And
Yes.
okay, so when you're in an antique store, person, and you encounter some weird thing like that, what do you think to yourself?
The first question I ask you is, did somebody doctor it? But somebody just emailed me the tinsel wrapped ornament, and I'm trying to remember. I got to get my ornament zone of identifying, because I did get some of those. I did send me a picture,
Yeah, yeah.
because I can bounce back to you. I believe they were West German, if I'm not mistaken.
I thought I saw
Yes.
that somewhere American. Well, hey, look, we don't need to bore our listeners with
Yes.
geeking out on whatever that is. So I will send you a picture. We'll figure it out. Yeah. So okay. So tips for collecting. I mean, people can drop it and then they save the cap and then they put the cap on another different
Right.
other ornament and it's no longer an authentic thing. But that's all innocent stuff, right? And then boxes matter. I was absolutely ecstatic to find the first 1939 box in really good condition at an antique store. They were keeping other stuff in it. And I'm like, hey, can I have this box? And they're like, $1 here, sure. I'm like, I know, I
Nice.
know, I know, I know, I know, I know. It was so hard. I am a terrible poker face. Those of you who have ever played cards with me know this. I, so I'm just like, contained.
Run out of the
I know, I know.
store.
So that was hilarious. But then they saw me coming the next time. They're like, "Oh, we got a couple more boxes. Those will be about $20 each." I'm like, "Oh, really? Come on."
You know
Yeah,
what
go
I
ahead.
do with my boxes is I put them under the tree.
Right. See, I have a couple of young cats. I don't dare. Yeah,
You
that's
can't.
a really fun idea.
Yeah, you can put them underneath the tree. So the boxes are so, if you find a complete set, like I have a complete set of red transparents in an
Mm,
original 1940 feather tree box. And I got them 25 years ago. So the chances of
nice.
finding what was in the box is maybe a jumbled mess of what should be in the box,
Oh,
right?
every time, pretty much. Yeah, I've never found an actual original set of what was it. It's Frankie's and it's this and it's a European and it's Japanese and it's just whatever mishmash fits in the box. It's the box I want.
So a couple of tips for your listeners. One is, the cap identification is super important because you can look at the cap and I can snap my fingers and say West German because of the split in the cap. And then you've got the corrugated Shiny Brite cap, and you've got the scalloped Frankie cap. And you've also got, some of them are stamped with Japan on them. So the cap is absolutely critical to identify where it's from. Now, I'm going to share a little tip on your boxes, especially with Frankie boxes and to a degree with Santa novelties. A lot of times, like if you get a George Frankie box, it'll say 214-S. Well, that stands for 2¼ inch bulbs were actually in that box. So if you have a 258 box, it was 2 5/8 box. Now, Shiny Brites also on the side of their boxes, and boxes, there's so many cool boxes, but a lot of times there's a color stamped on the side panel of the box. So it'll say purple, or it'll say chartreuse, and that's meant that the whole box was that color. So that tells you if you've got a box where there's reds and yellows and greens, well, it's just a mismatch of stuff that ended up in there. Now, the smaller the bulb is typically the earlier the bulbs. Okay, so 1¾ bulbs were some of the first bulbs that were produced versus a 3-inch bulb comes later.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I know that's
so
a weird
very
tip.
small. Huh.
Yeah.
Well,
so
because once again,
now,
light bulbs, right?
The miniatures are a whole nother story because most of them came from Japan. But the smaller, like the 1¾ 2-inch bulbs, those were some of the earlier ones versus when you get to the jumbos and you get up to the bigger sizes. So,
And then there's store display ones that are enormous. And
yes.
well,
So,
I'd love to see if you have, is there, because you said they originally came from light bulb molds.
yes.
Do you have any of the light bulbs that were made in the molds?
So luckily, there's a guy called Jeffrey in Pennsylvania who actually has a couple of the molds. But collect what you like, what grabs your eye. If you like stencils, collect stencils. If you like railroad lanterns from Premier Glass, find all the railroad lanterns you can. But just don't think about it in terms of what's this worth? I really, it's got to catch your eye, and you could do phenomenal things. I put my ornaments in the really special ones that I'm afraid to hang on my tree because they're going to drop. I put in bowls on the kitchen counter.
Yeah.
And
I've done
so collect what you like. You can take the tree toppers. Are you into tree toppers? Did you get into tree toppers yet?
Not so much yet. Oh.
They look cool on candlestick holders.
Okay. Well,
And
one thing I did do is you can take knitting needles and thread them on there and make like a little tree that stands up by itself.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's an idea for folks.
I think that folks can really zero in on if they like the transparent War Years bulbs. Those are cool.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I really like those. Now, okay, so speaking of which, let's talk about the infamous paper caps. Now, I was watching a video where there's like different types of hangers, and because that's like the holy grail thing, right? I still don't have a paper cap. I have some wartime unsilvered, don't have a paper cap. Still looking for it.
Doggone hard to find. So your transparents came when the sale of silver nitrate to put inside to get that shiny reflecting, that was banned. So then they went to transparents. And then when metal became so scarce, then in the United States, they couldn't put metal caps on.
Or even tinsel inside.
Right. And the tinsel was directed to thwart the radar from the enemy. So George Frankie and Sons Company, who was the ornament maker too, ornament decorator, they actually ended up shipping their tinsel over to Europe to be dropped out of airplanes to deflect the German Luftwaffe Air Force. Can you believe that? That's crazy. So you couldn't even buy tinsel. So people reused tinsel during the war years. So no silver nitrate, no metal, but I still want to sell ornaments. And so I've got to come up with a way to do that. And so they went with these paper caps. They were only made during a couple of years, Willow. So a stencil could have been made from you know, 1946 to 1960, you can find a Merry Christmas poinsettia. You can find a
Hmm.
holly spray Merry Christmas. But those paper caps, you're narrowing in on something that only was sold for a couple of years. That's like
Right,
there's this
right.
special Santa that I just found out because people wanted to know about this crazy Santa guy who looks a little scary. He was only made 1 year. And so when you're talking about things, these unicorns that,
Hmm.
you might have really a collector audience that really wants to hone in on the unicorns. So cardboard caps, a Santa, things that were only glow in the dark. I did a whole show on glow in the dark. My God, they
Oh,
had
wow.
such a short run, because it was
Wow.
Halloweeny kind of thing. I did this glow in the
Yeah.
dark. Because what makes an ornament rare is two things. One is
Hmm.
how many years it was made, and
Right.
two, how was it sold? So you have some ornaments that were only one or two in an assortment of 12. So when you've got something that was sold in an assortment, it's going to be far rarer than sets of 12.
Right, right. Because there's only one, so it's a 1 in 12 chance of it being that one.
Exactly. And so I
Right.
try to tell the audience that and educate them on that. If you're looking for a complete set of XYZ, you may struggle with that. You may struggle
Mm.
because they were only sold in assortments. And
Well,
so
that's
that's
the
how,
challenge, though. See, that's the
that's,
fun of the hunt.
oh my God, I love the hunt,
Right?
and I'm finding that estate sales are good.
Hmm.
The antique trade kind of comes and goes depending on the part of the country you're in. Now, Pennsylvania and Indiana and the Midwest had far more, I think, sales than the West Coast did. So I'm in Denver,
Hmm.
you're in California.
Yes.
They had to come a long way. Now, Santa Novelties, hate to keep preaching about them, but they had a branch in San Diego. Okay. So
Okay.
they're one of the rare companies, Willow, out your way that actually was selling to some extent Corning bulbs from a period of 1947 to 1950. So in a 3-year period, they were selling Corning made bulbs from the East Coast over in your neck of the woods in the West Coast.
So they'd get decorated in California and then reboxed as Santa novelties?
So they were coming via truck in bulk packs from Corning to Santa
Corning.
Novelties and then repackaged in sets of dozens. There's some
Right.
talk that they had some glass blowers in San Diego, but I'm not confident of that because they only had 50 employees there. And then the Shiny Brites and George Frankie actually split the West Coast and the East Coast. So depending on where you are, Shiny Brites were very popular in the Midwest and going out to the
Mm.
West Coast, but George Frankie was far more popular along the Eastern Seaboard.
Oh, another challenge for people collecting. If you're on the East Coast, collect shiny brights because they're more rare.
Yeah. So
So
there is
this,
that West Coast, I forgot about that. That's where you might see things that look like Frankie's because the Santa Novelties and the Frankies actually become one company. And so I
okay.
like to call them Harry Heim Santa Novelties, George Frankie's, but that we're getting into the weeds for your audience. That's the cool thing about these Christmas ornaments because people migrate all the time, right? And so you're going
Right,
to bring
sure.
your ornaments from Pennsylvania to California and you're going to go back and forth and grandma
Yep.
moved. I think estate sales in the Midwest are just oh gosh, they're so good. So good.
Well, sadly, I'm not in the Midwest, and
I know.
although the local radio station is going to air this, and other listeners out on Spotify and places of that nature might be able to find some treasures out there.
Well, the local radio station, I would just say go up and just paw through things that you may have set aside that grandma had or great grandma had, and don't just say, "Oh, this is a box of stuff and there's a couple of Christmas ornaments." I hope that people look at them a little differently and say, now, wait a minute, somebody actually might have painted this, or
Mhm.
did this come from Europe during the war years? Or maybe there's a little curiosity rather than saying, it's just a dime store bulb, right?
Right. Yeah, it's that grandma's old junk, whatever. Get rid of it.
Yeah, but it would look super cool, like you say, knitting needles in a bowl, you know,
Hmm.
and let's just say it's 80 years old, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and it almost think of it like a little tiny animal that survived in the wild all these times, right?
Oh my goodness.
You
Right.
know, really, it survived. It survived these cross country trips, and they're so easy. I break them all the time, but
All right. Oh God.
yeah, because
This
unbreakable.
precious, precious creature.
Yeah. And so after we get into the 1960s and then people decide that they want unbreakable ornaments, you know, that's
Ah,
when the industry kind of changes.
yeah. Not
Yeah.
interested in those. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
When
I
I
had a
think
lot of
about
those as a kid, and I still get a few every, well, not one or two every year. That's like, yeah, from an import store. That's a cute mushroom or a little fox or something like that, you know. But I always am looking for the cool holy grail of the paper cap. I'm still looking.
you know, it's tough, and I think that the hunt is what makes it fun. Now,
Oh yeah.
can you shop online for a cardboard cap? Yeah, you can, but you know, it's kind of the hunt that kind of then there's a story of, I remember when I was
Mm-hmm.
at such and such a place and I found this and I was just ecstatic about it.
And I found that 1939 box, and they didn't know what they
Oh,
had. Now I have a story.
now you got a story. And the boxes themselves, the funny story about the boxes, when you look at some of the boxes, and if they're stamped on the bottom, on the backside of them, they'll say Alfred Cartons, some of them. And
Hmm.
Alfred Cartons actually made a patent for Christmas ornament boxes, and they were based on shipping peaches.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, isn't that fun? And when you look at the box, you're like, oh yeah, now I can totally see why this is a peach box.
Yes, but they had to come up with that, right?
Right, really smart. Well, and then they have the lid with the window in it with the Christmas tree, which is, you know, and then there's Santa shaking hands with Uncle Sam during the war years, you know, up till about 1950, and I've got a couple of those, and
You have the missing one that doesn't have Uncle Sam and Santa. So there's a video called The American Made Box.
I
And
think I've seen that. Yeah.
yeah, and so I look at hundreds of boxes, and then all of a sudden I realize I'm looking at a box and there's no Uncle Sam and Santa. And I'm thinking, where's Uncle Sam and Santa? They're not on this,
Right.
they're not in this box. Well, before Uncle Sam and Santa, there was a period of time where they just sold an American made box. So now, one out of 100 green and white shiny bright boxes you'll see, only one doesn't have Uncle Sam and Santa. So there's nuances to the boxes. Like your feather tree box
Hmm.
came in like four different versions. There's a sole distributor, then there's West New
Hmm.
York, and then there's different versions of that box.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I think they come in blue as well later on, or
blue, yes, and
hmm
green. I've got a
hmm
green one, and you think you've got one thing, but then you can collect it. And the cool thing about it is they're lightweight, right? We're not lugging
yeah.
around. I don't collect tractors. I don't collect, heavy
Right.
things. The
Yeah, but
cool
and then
thing,
you can store your collection in the collection.
yeah. But the cool thing about collecting and trying to rescue ornaments is I can actually put them in small spaces. If I was collecting art, where am I going to hang this huge picture? Marbles would be cool to collect too because they wouldn't take up a lot of space. And marbles have a collection of Christmas ornaments, and that the glass blowers that actually blew Christmas ornaments in Europe started with marbles.
Oh,
And
interesting.
Max Eckhart, that started with Shiny Brites,
Hmm.
his family owned a doll factory. And so they had to have hand blown glass eyes for the
Oh,
dolls.
oh, wow. So it all comes back from that.
Yeah. Because
Gosh.
his
Wow.
family in
Wild.
Germany knew glass blowers, and then they were in the epicenter of the toy trade in Europe. And
Oh,
then they had
wow.
an ornament factory and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, what a great conversation. I mean, maybe we can get some like listener questions about very specific things and then do like a future episode.
Oh, sure.
Well, it's been a delight. Well, Merry Christmas if you're listening at Christmas time, and Merry future Christmas if it's not Christmas time, everybody. Thanks,
Thanks for
everyone.
listening.
Bye.